Thank you. It's one of those funny things about written statements. People often come and they haven't timed them. Ms. Winebanks, you obviously began your career, or relatively early in your career, with the Watergate investigation. Wasn't one of the major things that President Nixon was accused of, the weaponization of government, using the IRS and so on? Wasn't that part of the final impeachment draft?
Right. I was not directly involved in the impeachment, in the prosecution, but you are correct. The impeachment charge misuse of power.
So we are exactly where you started your career, ma'am. We are seeing the weaponization. Richard Milhouse Nixon was accused, and there was plenty of evidence that he thought the IRS and other tactics would be perfectly acceptable against his political enemies. Here we are again. So one of the questions I'm going to ask, all of you are attorneys, is that correct? All of you understand the ethics of the American Bar Association. All of you understand the question of what can be waived in attorney-client privilege, correct?
Yes.
I'll go right down. Ms. Winebanks, is it in fact your prerogative to waive attorney-client privilege? Do you have that right under the ethics rules?
I do not.
Correct.
Only my client does.
Exactly. Only your client can waive it. Mr. Hamilton, same, right?
Correct.
Mr. Trustee?
Same.
Mr. Costello?
Yes, which is why I have a written document of the waiver with me.
And so, although you have a waiver from your client, well, let's just say Mr. Cohen, did not have a waiver from President Trump. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Have any of you, either individually or seen other people, other attorneys, other than Mr. Cohen, tape their client and then turn it over for a prosecution or other use ever? Any of you?
Never.
No. No.
Ms. Winebanks, it's kind of interesting that what hung President Nixon was, in fact, to a great extent, the tapes he made. But he made them, correct?
He made them, and they were evidence of crime, and so they fall within a crime-fraud exception, and they proved the crime. They were the actual commission of crime.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Mr. Costello, I'm sorry. I'll take my reading glasses off. I'll do much better. We're dealing with an unusual situation. We have a former president who was never charged with any crimes until he announced and became the lead candidate to run for president. Is that correct?
Yes, quite a coincidence.
Yeah, I don't believe in coincidences happening that often.
Neither do I.
Neither do you. So the question I have for you here today is, have you ever seen uncoordinated a series of state and federal indictments of any candidate or any other person like this, where they're indicted in a state they never went to? They're indicted for documents that they had in their possession that they say they declassified and that they have a right to declassify. They get indicted for a misdemeanor that has already run its statute of limitations, but by linking it to a federal offense, which the state doesn't have the right to charge, they make the case and they're now trying that. Have you ever seen anything close to that in your decades of practice?
No, not at all.
Mr. Trustee, have you ever seen so many indictments that are novel in how they're put together?
I have not. I'd maybe use the word inventive, but either way, I'm with you on the point.
Mr. Hamilton, have you ever seen, and you know, you're apparently the junior one here, have you ever seen or researched or learned about such a broad array of novel or inventive prosecutions as President Trump is dealing with?
Absolutely not.
Ms. Winebanks, I respect your years of practicing as an attorney. Have you ever seen so many charges coming, dating back so many years, but only coming to pass at this time?
I have.
When did you see them?
Well, let's go back to the fact that it takes a long time to investigate, that there was reason for example, in the New York...
No, I was asking for another example, and since you don't have one, let me just close. I've been up here for 24 years. I was a soldier when Nixon was president. I am appalled that what began with Watergate as a legitimate scandal of the wrongdoing has now become an organized weaponization by this president and his Department of Justice. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.